Every year, thousands of Michiganders are permanently excluded from the educational system for a remainder of their lives, not because they did something wrong, but simply because they were born with or developed a severe intellectual disability. So, how does this happen in Michigan, a state that values education? And how does this happen to one of our most vulnerable and marginalized populations within our state? See, the present law reads that if you have a severe intellectual disability, once you reach your 26th birthday, if you don't have the intellectual capacity to qualify to attend college, trade school, or a job readiness program of any kind, then you have no purpose or place in our Michigan education system. Let me repeat that. If you do not intellectually qualify to attend college or trade school or a job readiness program of any kind, then you have no purpose or place in our Michigan education system. The argument behind that is that the state of Michigan saw no economic advantage or benefit in continued education for severely intellectual disabled population. And the task of educating this group would only strain the special education system. Furthermore, parents and guardians like myself should be grateful and satisfied that the Michigan education system allows adults with special needs to attend until they're 26 instead of 18 like most states. In other words, although Michigan proudly welcomes and encourages all adult populations to continue their education with lifelong programs, no matter what their age, gender, or socioeconomic status, or even incarceration status, the one thing Michigan does not provide is a seat or even room at the educational table if you're 26 and older with a severe intellectual disability that makes you ineligible for employment. Now, I'm not saying that I want to take away from the wonderful job that our governor and our lawmakers have done when it comes to education. I just want to make sure that we are inclusive of every group that desires to learn. Our adults with special needs whose learning, though may not be traditional, doesn't stop at 26, and no Michiganders should. Adults with special needs want and deserve the right and the dignity to continue learning professional, life skills, community skills, and they deserve the right to be able to socialize with their friends exactly the way they did for over 20 years in their inclusive local ISDs, learning centers, and transition centers. This is why I'm proposing to lawmakers of Michigan and our governor that we create smart campuses, which is a continuation of education for adults with severe intellectual disabilities. This way, we can give our special needs adults, one of our most vulnerable and marginalized populations in Michigan, over the age of 26, access to continued education and services 5 days a week during school hours. And instead of going through the Michigan Department of Education, I propose that we go through MDHHS, which has an annual budget of $33 billion a year, as they already fund and allocate money for services that would be provided on the campus. I am proposing that there be 57 support campuses, which would allow access to the at risk population in the 57 intermediate school districts. But before we get into what these campuses would look like, let's take a look at the population that will be served and why they are disadvantaged and marginalized in the state of Michigan. First, this population is economically disadvantaged. Over 97% of severely intellectual disabled population lives below the poverty level. Remember, after age 18, adults with special needs are considered independent, which means that they no longer depend on their parents' income. If they collect Social Security, they receive under $12,000 a year, putting them well below the poverty level. And crime against persons with disabilities statistics tables reads that persons with cognitive disabilities have the highest rate of victimization among disability types. Only an estimated 19% of rapes and sexual assaults against persons with disabilities was reported to police due to poor or nonverbal skills, lack of understanding, or the ability to contact a mandated reporter outside of the home. And the rate of violent victimization among persons with disabilities was 4 times the rate of that of persons without. And 1 in 3 robbery victims had at least one disability. By providing support campuses, we offer safe environments filled with state and government mandated reporters. Mandated reporters can spot and report abuse of adults with special needs. When at home by themselves or with family, these instances sometimes go unreported, unnoticed, or may even be perpetrated by the caregiver themselves. Economically, support campuses would allow caregivers and guardians and parents to get back to work in the Michigan economy. Caregivers report having to leave the workforce entirely or give up their retirement once their adult with special needs turns 26 because there is no resources that can be compiled to create a constant day, 5 days a week, for their adult child to continue their education and where they feel safe leaving them. Instead, they are forced into day programs. Though well intended, they are privatized and not equally available to the residents in Michigan. And when they are available, the wait list can sometimes be years to get in, putting a strain not only financially but psychologically on a parent who has to become a permanent caregiver. And if you say to yourself, I can't imagine how that must feel, sure you can. Just think about how your home life was during COVID, when you had to stay home or leave the workforce entirely to care for your to homeschool your children. When you had to plan in detail every socialized event, running a simple errand to the grocery store had to be planned in advance because you were worried about leaving your children at home unattended. The difference is you and your family knew that this was just a temporary situation, that life would resume as normal after the pandemic. But for caregivers with adults with severe intellectual disabilities, this is permanent. This is our new normal. The school doors will never be open again for our adult children, and those trips to the grocery store will forever have to be planned and prepared for. Socialization is sometimes out of the question depending on how our children may be feeling that day. And just like the pandemic, those issues due to isolation and lack of socialization, which sparked a national health event and crisis among caregivers and children, well, that has always been there for centuries in our community. The only thing is, our adults can't always express the way they feel, and when we parents and caregivers do speak up, no one heard us because it didn't affect them. Support campuses will always be inclusive. In other words, adults with special needs are never mandated or required to be on or stay on campus. And they will work beside educators, respite workers, parapros, therapists, community members, exactly like they did at their ISDs, learning centers, transition centers, and their Special Olympics programs. They will maintain school hours and days where students are encouraged to engage in activities on and off campus at their own pace. But they too will have a place where they can meet their social, sensory, and therapeutic needs away from home, allowing them to live more independently and safe, giving them an independent aspect or purpose in their lives. Keep it in compliance with the inclusive values of MDHHS. Also, campuses will offer spaces and places where adults with special needs can interact with the community and vice versa. So, what would these support campuses look like? Imagine a small city. One section of the city would have mock businesses like banks, grocery stores, restaurants, clothing stores. Local businesses would be offered the opportunity to set up spaces to mock their businesses, to provide adults with special needs a comfortable place to practice and learn social skills that they will utilize in these establishments when they're off campus. The learning portion of the campus would offer life skills with classrooms that work on everyday skills that are needed, like cooking skills, home safety, car safety, reading and writing, uses of language and speech devices, sign language, music instrument class, financial education like learning how to recognize money, stranger danger, and more. The support part of the campus would be the health portion of the campus. And it would have things like mock dentist or doctor's offices to help our adults learn how to react and advocate for themselves in these situations. Along with contracted therapy services like ABA services, physical therapy, OT, speech therapy, any therapist office that wanted to have their business there. And many parents have reached out to me and advocated for their local CMH office to be placed on campus, giving workers the chance to see therapies in action. Communicating directly with a therapist, workers and parents can set goals on the spot and give authorization requests, cutting down on travel, especially in the winter. The next portion of the campus, or the recreation part of the campus, was inspired by a study by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. It says that children and adults with mobility limitations and intellectual or learning disabilities were at greater risk for obesity. The annual healthcare cost of obesity that is related to the disabilities are an estimated 44 billion. They attributed this to the lack of accessibility of environments like sidewalks, parks, and exercise equipment, and lack of resources like money, transportation, social support from friends, families, neighbors, and community members. Well, smart campuses would bridge that gap, offering the marginalized population an active center that would include a gymnasium, a track, a pool, dance studio, a place to train for Special Olympic events, basketball, and tennis courts. And Michiganders overwhelmingly request horse therapy, which was proven in a non disputed research to be therapeutic for the diagnosis of autism and aids in relief in anxiety and depression. Recreational activities would also include gardening, arts and crafts, and more. In other words, these campuses would offer a world of purpose for our special needs adults. Michigan is a proud sponsor of continued lifelong education. With over 90 colleges, which include everything from trade school to the highest PhD level, it's available for any Michigander who wishes to apply. Our governor values education so much that she recently passed the Michigan Project Connect bill, which allows high schoolers the opportunity to go to college for free for 2 years. As an educator, a Michigander, and a parent, I couldn't be more proud, and I don't ever want to take away from that. But dear Governor and elected officials, as a parent with an adult with a severe intellectual disability, I do want to make sure that every Michigander has the right to continued education, no matter their economic circumstances, geographic location, ability, or disability. Senator Kristen McDonald-Rivet of the 35th District, my home district, has worked with me to explore in writing a possible bill. She's meeting resistance right now. She was brave enough not only to listen, but to act on behalf of thousands of families across the state. I am learning that there are so many hoops to jump through to create a bill. And as a lifelong Michigander, I ponder why what seems to be obvious and right gets the most resistance. But I'm also learning while meeting and talking to hundreds of residents and families along the way who continue to voice to me how important this bill needs. The fight must continue. Remember, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is not a money issue. Remember, MDHHS is allocated $33 billion annually for services. This is a moral issue, an obligation to do what's right for one of the most vulnerable, marginalized Michigander populations in our state, who don't have the ability to demand it for themselves. No longer should adults with special needs be forced to live a life of isolation at home. No longer should their voice be absent from the discussion of continued education. No longer should they be dismissed because of their lack of ability to be employed. Instead, they too deserve to take their rightful seat at the education table along with every Michigander. It has taken far too long for that to happen. So on behalf of the adults with special needs who this bill can benefit, I'm asking that lawmakers, community advocates, citizens, parents, siblings, family members, friends, I'm asking you to use your voice to help those who don't have one. Let it be known that we will push and fight for this bill once Senator McDonald-Rivet produces it. Because every Michigander can pursue their purpose, and they have a right to. Every Michigander has the right to success, no matter what that looks like. And we should do it because, in the words of Dr. Seuss, a voice is a voice, no matter how small. I'm Tiffany Gator, and if you wish to join our fight, we do not need money. We only need your support through numbers and votes if this bill gets passed. Please continue to share this video and join our Facebook, Michigan No Aging Out of Education at 26. Thank you so much.